Did early humans marry? The real origin of monogamy. Look at this gold ring. To us it represents love, commitment, the most serious promise one human being can make to another. It sits at the center of one of the oldest and most universal ceremonies in human civilization. Across every culture, on every continent, human beings have found a way to mark the union of two individuals. With rituals, with witnesses, with symbols meant to last forever. But what if I told you that this ring as we know it today is less than 10,000 years old? What if I told you that for the vast majority of our existence as a species, for 190,000 of the 200,000 years we have spent on this planet, the concept of marriage simply did not exist? That our ancestors made no vows, signed no contracts, promised no eternal fidelity before any authority, religious or civil, and that even so, they raised families, they had children, they built civilizations. So what is marriage really? Is it an instinct written into our blood, carved into our DNA by millions of years of evolution? Or is it a cultural invention, as recent and as arbitrary as the alphabet or the monetary system? The answer is simultaneously simpler and more unsettling than either of those options. Marriage is not natural, but it is not artificial either. It is a solution, a remarkably clever response to a very specific set of problems that evolution created, problems that no other species on this planet had to solve in quite the same way. Today we are going to find out what those problems were, and understand why the solution we came up with completely changed the course of human history. Our wild past. Go back 200,000 years. Homo sapiens have just emerged in Africa. Anatomically they are identical to us. The same brain, the same body, the same capacity for language, for reasoning, for emotion. But the world they live in has nothing to do with ours. There are no cities, no villages, no written laws or organized authorities, no agriculture, no domesticated animals, no private property. There are only bands. Groups of 20 to 50 individuals moving constantly across the landscape, following the migrations of the animals they hunt, searching for fruit and roots, fleeing droughts and predators, surviving. In this world, the question of sexual and family organization looked completely different from anything we know today. Anthropologists have debated this subject for more than a century, and they still do not have total consensus. But what fossils, the study of our closest relatives, and the observation of hunter-gatherer populations that still exist today all tell us is this: partnerships were flexible, bonds were temporary, and the responsibility of raising children was shared across the entire group, not concentrated in an isolated pair. Look at chimpanzees, with whom we share 98% of our genetic material. Males compete fiercely for reproductive access to females. Females raise their offspring almost entirely alone. There are no stable pairs. There is no lasting bond between male and female beyond the reproductive act itself. Look at gorillas. One dominant male controlling a harem of females. A rigid hierarchy maintained by force. No mutual fidelity. No partnership. Early humans were different from both. More cooperative than chimpanzees. Less hierarchical than gorillas. They lived in groups where everyone contributed to the survival of everyone else, including in raising the young. This system made perfect sense in that context. In an environment where any adult could die tomorrow, attacked by a predator, struck down by disease, lost on a hunt, concentrating all responsibility for a child in a single pair was far too risky a bet. Distributing that responsibility across the whole group dramatically increased the survival chances of every child. There was no my child and your child in the exclusive sense we know today. There were the children of the band, and the band looked after them. For 190,000 years that was how we lived. 190,000 years without marriage, without fidelity contracts, without union ceremonies, and the species survived all the same. So what changed? The biological twist, the helpless baby. To understand what changed, you need to look at something you have probably never thought about scientifically: the fact that human babies are absolutely ridiculous in terms of autonomy at birth. Think about this. A calf, hours after being born, stands up. It walks. It begins to nurse on its own. Within days it can keep up with the herd. Within weeks, it is a functional animal. A foal is on its feet in less than an hour. A newborn elephant weighs over 100 kilograms and can walk on the very day it is born. A penguin chick can already regulate its own body temperature within days of hatching. And a human baby? A human baby, hours after birth, cannot even lift its own head. It cannot roll over. It cannot reach for food. It cannot regulate its own temperature. It is completely, absolutely, totally dependent on external care to survive anything at all. What went wrong with our species? The answer is the brain. The human brain is the most complex organ in the known universe. It is what makes us human. It is what allows us to speak, to plan, to create art, to build civilizations, to do science. But growing this brain has an enormous cost, and that cost has to be paid somewhere. The problem is this. For humans to move bipedally, walking upright on 2 feet, which is one of our defining characteristics, the female pelvis must have a certain size and a certain shape. And that size has a physical limit that cannot be exceeded without compromising locomotion. The birth canal therefore has a maximum size. And the human brain, when fully developed, is too large to pass through that canal. The solution evolution found was apparently simple, but it has enormous consequences. Human babies are born too early. They are born before they are ready. They are born in a state of incompleteness that has no parallel in the animal kingdom. The brain of a newborn human is only 25% of its final adult size. An orangutan is born at 45%. A chimpanzee at 40%. We come in at 25. And the window of dependency that results from this is extraordinary. A human baby requires intensive care for the first several years of life. But the real vulnerability, the inability to survive alone, extends for a decade or more. Depending on the culture and the context, it can stretch to 15, 16, 18 years. No other species has a dependency window this long. Not one. Now think about what this means for the mother. A human mother who is nursing a baby, carrying it, protecting it around the clock, does not have free hands to hunt. She does not have spare energy to travel long distances in search of food. She cannot simultaneously do what she needs to do to survive and what she needs to do to keep her child alive. She needs help. And this is where the equation begins to shift. A male who stays, who brings food, who keeps predators away, who carries the baby while the mother rests, who shares the burden of raising a creature that, on its own, cannot survive. This male is doing something that dramatically increases the survival chances of his offspring. And the children who survive carry the genes of fathers who stayed, of fathers who cooperated, of fathers who formed lasting bonds. Generation after generation, over tens of thousands of years, natural selection was very slowly adjusting our behavior. Individuals with a greater capacity to form long-term bonds with a partner had children who survived in greater numbers. Those children repeated the pattern. And those who could not form that bond left fewer descendants. Our brains develop specific systems for this. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, is released during physical contact, during sex, during breastfeeding. It creates feelings of attachment and trust. Vasopressin, in males, is associated with guarding and protective behaviors toward a mate, and has been found in dramatically different concentrations in monogamous species versus promiscuous ones. These are not romantic mechanisms. They are survival mechanisms that evolution refined over hundreds of thousands of years because they increased the chances that offspring would survive long enough to reproduce. What we call love, that overwhelming feeling of wanting to be with someone, of wanting to protect them, of wanting to build something with them, is rooted in this. It is not a poetic coincidence. It is an evolutionary pressure. But this explains the bond. It explains the cooperating pair. It does not explain marriage as a social institution. It does not explain the contracts, the ceremonies, the laws, the rules of inheritance. For that, we need to move forward in time. We need a second event. An event that had nothing to do with biology. It had to do with land. The agricultural revolution and the contract. About 12,000 years ago, somewhere in what we now call the Middle East, one of the greatest transformations in the history of our species took place. Humans stopped following animals and started making animals stay put. The agricultural revolution was not a single moment. It was a process that unfolded independently in multiple places over thousands of years. In the Fertile Crescent, in China, in the Americas, in sub-Saharan Africa. But the result in all of those places was the same. Humans became sedentary. They stayed in one place. They built permanent structures. They planted seeds and waited for them to grow. They domesticated animals and kept them in enclosures. And with sedentariness came something that our nomadic ancestors had never experienced. accumulation. When you are constantly moving, you cannot accumulate anything that does not fit on your back. Everything you own is also a weight you must carry. Mobility is your greatest advantage, and accumulation is the enemy of mobility. But when you stay in one place, you can build. You can store. You can accumulate food for winter, tools for the harvest, animals for the following year. You can build a better house, a stronger fence, a larger granary. You can, for the first time in the history of our species, have things. And with having things came immediately the most unsettling question that property has ever raised. When I die, who gets this? This question sounds simple. But it was this question that transformed marriage from an effective bond into something far more resembling a legal contract. Think about the problem from the perspective of a farmer who has spent his entire life working that field. Who irrigated it, fertilized it, built the walls that protect it. Who raised that herd generation after generation. Who built that house with his own hands. He wants all of that to stay in the family. He wants the effort of a lifetime not to dissolve into nothing after his death. He wants the fruit of his work to benefit his descendants. But to do that, he needs to be sure that his descendants are actually his descendants. And here is the fundamental biological problem that agriculture placed at the center of social organization. Paternity was never verifiable. A mother always knows a child is hers. She was there. She felt the pregnancy, felt the birth. There is no possible doubt. A father, without modern DNA testing technology, could never have the same certainty. There was always the possibility, however small, that he was investing the resources of his entire life raising another man's children. In nomadic societies, this problem existed, but its consequences were limited. There was not much to inherit. The group looked after all the children anyway. But when there are fields, when there are houses, when there are herds, when there are generations of accumulated labor that need a destination, uncertainty about paternity becomes an economic problem of the first order. The solution that agricultural societies found for this problem was formal, public, and binding marriage. A ceremony before witnesses that declared that this woman belonged to this man, and to this man only. That any child born of that union was, by legal and social definition, that man's child. And that any violation of this agreement carried severe consequences. The earliest marriage laws we have on record date from about 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. They were written on clay tablets. There was not a single line about love. There were clauses about the dowry, about inheritance, about what happened if the wife was infertile, about the rights of children from different unions, about the legal consequences of adultery. It was a contract. A very specific contract, designed to solve a very specific problem, ensuring that accumulated wealth passed to the verified biological descendants of the man who had created it. In many ancient societies, the transaction was completely explicit. The bride's father received a payment, the bride price, in exchange for transferring his daughter's reproductive rights to the groom. It was literally a purchase. You were buying a guarantee of legitimate offspring. This sounds deeply offensive to our modern ears. But it was perfect economic logic within the value system of those societies, where wealth and family continuity were the absolute priorities. And it was this economic logic that shaped marriage for millennia. In ancient Greece, marrying was a civic duty. Citizens were obligated to produce legitimate children to perpetuate the polis. In Rome, marriage was a legal contract with multiple possible forms, each with different implications for the transfer of property and rights. Only much later, in medieval Europe, did the Christian Church transform marriage into a sacrament, into a promise made to God, indissoluble and eternal. It introduced the consent of both spouses as a requirement, which, at the time, was a radical innovation, because it went against the tradition of parents deciding for their children. And only in the last 200 years, with industrialization, with the emergence of the urban middle class, with the movements for women's rights, did romantic love marriage become not just possible but the dominant expectation in the Western world. Love as the foundation of marriage is, historically speaking, a very recent experiment. An idea that our great-grandparents still did not entirely take for granted. Conclusion. So we come back to the ring. Do you look at it differently now? Inside this small golden object are 200,000 years of human history. There are the pressures of an evolution that selected for creatures capable of forming lasting bonds because their children were born too early and too vulnerable to survive any other way. There are the anxieties of farmers who needed to guarantee that the fruit of their labor reached their descendants and was not lost to chaos. There are the aspirations of generations who found in public commitment before the community a way to create stability and meaning. Marriage is not natural in the sense that it always existed and is inevitable. But it is also not a conspiracy or an arbitrary invention. It is a response that has been reinvented over and over again across different cultures in different forms, but always in answer to the same fundamental human needs. The need to raise vulnerable children, the need to pass on what we have built, and the need not to be alone in that process. What is fascinating is realizing that every era reinvented marriage in its own image. Every society designed the institution to solve the problems that most concerned it at that particular moment. When the problem was the survival of children, the emotional bond was the solution. When the problem was inheritance, the legal contract was the solution. When the problem was the salvation of the soul, the religious sacrament was the solution. When the problem was loneliness and lack of meaning in an individualist society, romantic love was the solution. And today? Today we are the first generation in history that genuinely has the ability to choose. Not just who we choose as a partner, but what kind of partnership we want to build. What promises we make and what promises we do not. What commitment means to us. Our ancestors on the savannah did not have that freedom. Biology and the necessity of survival made the decisions for them. The farmers of Mesopotamia did not have it. Family and economy made the decisions for them. For most of human history, marriage was something that happened to people, not something people chose. We are different. And that is simultaneously an enormous freedom and an enormous responsibility. Because when there is no longer a ready-made answer inherited from tradition, when there is no longer a universal formula that works for everyone, each one of us has to find our own answer to the same question that humans have been asking since we came into the world. What does it mean to build a life with another person? This ring has been many things throughout history. A contract, a sacrament, a status symbol, a chain, an anchor, a shield. Today it can be whatever we decide it to be. And that, when you really think about it, is something no previous generation ever truly had. If this video made you see something you always thought of as obvious in a completely different way, leave a comment telling me which moment surprised you most. For me, it was discovering that the earliest written marriage laws in all of history do not mention the word love a single time. Subscribe to the channel to keep going on this journey into the surprising origins of things we take for granted. There is much more to discover.